The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
For ECAP in particular, some context around the ECAP contract and how the contract and the performance standards function together as we're really thinking about how we bring that work into this progression process, and then provide some more context around some of the family support work that has been happening in ECAP over the past couple of years that will really drive the progression process as well. So it looks like we might have had some technical assistance problems with sound, and hopefully we're good to go now. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sonia to really talk about the weighted WAC process.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So we are really excited to have finally gotten started with our focus groups. Unfortunately, we did have a reschedule due to weather in Vancouver. It looks to be that focus group will be rescheduled in the first week of January. But the other 6 that have been scheduled for this week, actually there were 7, have all been taking place, and there's one more scheduled again on Saturday. So as you can see, we've had focus groups take place in Pasco, Tacoma, Anacortes, Tumwater, Union Gap, and Bremerton. And then again on Saturday, we were looking at the ECAP and Head Start. Was it Saturday? Oh, sorry. December 15th, that was last night, Bremerton, and then I thought there was one more coming up this Saturday.
Some Saturdays will be a parents group.
Okay, it's the parent group. Excellent. I thought there was, and it was in King County. Thank you, Luba. So they've gone really well. We've had some great representation from both family home and center providers, as well as some representation in Head Start and ECAP. There was a really good turnout with SEIU members and some SEIU representatives as well. There were 3 focus groups that had tribal representation present, and then in Yakima we focused on Spanish-speaking providers, and those were family home providers. And then we also had a Yakima Nation tribal licensor and a tribal family home provider participate in that group as well. We had some partner representation, including Child Care Aware, developmental pre-K, some school districts and ESDs, as well as local providers, advocacy, and organizational groups. Each of the groups managed to fit all their work and go through each of the drafts in their allocated time, and it was very lively. Participants really seemed to enjoy the opportunity to be involved and provide their feedback. I know in the focus groups I participated in, we were able to open it up for some additional feedback at the end of the group. And as we had mentioned when we first started presenting this process, we took the time after each focus group to share with each other some of the lessons learned, and I was going to go ahead and let Luba talk a little bit more about that. So thank you, everyone.
Do you have any questions in regard of the scheduled groups, future scheduled groups, how to contact coalitions as well as Thrive before I will start talking about the lessons learned so far? Okay, so first of all, I would like to share my greatest appreciation to the communities, to the providers, to the partners, as well as to the coalitions and to Thrive by 5. The organization is explicit in regard of how much effort been put in targeting specific populations, bringing all of the representation from all of the subgroups that were identified in a participation requirements. So it's amazing to see family home providers and having equal representation with center providers, partners considering the voices of family and home providers and kind of prioritizing their voices versus bringing their own opinions and own concerns and own perspectives. So it's great to see this collaborative work that is happening around the state and in every single location. So it shows how much we learned so far through the alignment process and how we continue to develop our relationships with the communities as well as with our stakeholders around the state and how this alignment process is helping us to actually build an infrastructure of community engagement around the state. So specifically, I would like to say that a number of concerns been raised before the focus groups in regard of the 3 hours will not be enough to review 123 pages of the rules. But as the structure of the meetings actually allowing to make it happen, even with their second language, because one of the groups that we had in Yakima, majority of the providers are Spanish-speaking providers with the interpreter in the room. So it's been very helpful to actually include interpreters to the training, to the facilitation training that's been provided by our contractor PCG and Thrive by 5 been leading this particular training. So as we included interpreters, now interpreters understand what the purpose and focus is of these particular activities, and they also took some time to review the rules prior to interpreting them. So then they're more prepared to do it, and it does not take as much time as it could take if you will have someone who is not prepared in the room. So even with the dual language speakers, 3 hours been enough time to actually, with 3 subgroups of people, taking some specific parts of the rules and reviewing them one by one, sorting in would they go to the survey or will not go to the survey. So as you remember, there are 3 subgroups in the focus group. The first subgroup is focusing on 4 components, content components of the rules, authority and intent, children outcomes, family engagement, and professional development. The second one, because it's the biggest one, is focusing on environments only. And then the third one is focusing on the last 2, which is curriculum and organization, classroom organization, I don't remember for sure, and administration. And then also participants do have time at the end of the meeting to share back how they've been approaching their work, what type of issues they've been facing. So it's kind of helping us to understand how we need to change and adjust our facilitation and our mediation through the meetings and organization of the meetings. So again, 3 hours been absolutely enough at every single group so far, and those concerns, seems like we've been able to resolve those concerns by restructuring how to organize the meeting. What we need to put a little bit more attention, again, by analyzing the first 6 focus groups is how to bring information to the participants about the alignment process that happened before the weighted walk process, because not all of the participants have a full knowledge and full awareness of all of the steps, because as this process takes a long time because it's a complex work, different people chiming into it at different points of time, and as we are involving more and more people statewide to this process, some type of overview or briefing of what steps been put in place prior to this particular focus group is very helpful. So now, kind of in a first introductory part of the focus groups, we're spending more time talking about alignment process, how we get to the weighted walk, and then from there talking about why, what, and how in regard of the weighting. So if some of you have been participating in focus groups so far and you would like to share your experiences, please feel free to do it or ask questions. Okay, so if there will be questions, please keep typing or raise your hand so we can hear you, but I will move with a walk update. So technical and legal review, as we talked last time, is completed, and it's why we do have our latest drafts that we're looking at right now and preparing them for the weighting process. Definition section of the regulations is completed, so you can and post it online, so you can see it online. We are working on justifications. As you remember, the initial work on justifications been done for the input, this summer, spring, and summer input process, and it's where community been asking to create in more specific justifications for every single rule, and have kind of two different templates of the walk. One template, as you see now, is posted online, where we have these 123 pages of all of the rules, proposed rules all together. In another template where we can compare family home rules, current rules with the proposed rules, and center current rules with the proposed rules, and we can highlight what changes been made and why those changes been made. So this is what we are working on, and it's what we call justifications. So it's supposed to be ready. We're planning it to finalize this work by March and have it available for everyone before the negotiated rulemaking process will start. So I'm not quite sure, Katie, what are you asking about? What are you looking online specifically? Are you looking at the drafts, the proposed drafts of the WAC? Yes, the 123 pages of the proposed draft of the WAC are posted online. So if you will go to the Department of Early Learning website, and if you cannot see it through the main links, you can type alignment in a search window, and then you will be able to get to the standards alignment webpage. And from the standards alignment webpage, you will go to the proposed weighted WAC, and it's where you will find the proposed WAC. What we can probably do to simplify this process, we can send everyone the links, and I believe I actually sent already the links to this particular link to everyone where you can see it. I believe, Katie, it's in your email box because I sent it a week ago, but I will resend it today so you will not have to search through your email box. We will work on making it more obvious. I appreciate your suggestion. So we are in the process also developing negotiated rulemaking and public comments process. and we are preparing update on this topic for you in January. Any questions, things to share about weighted WAC? I'm very happy that you found it, Katie. Great. Our next meeting in January, Nicole is helping me to find the date.
Yeah, our next advisory meeting is January 27th from 11 to 1.
So it's where we would like to share with you our thinking about negotiated rulemaking process and public comments. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Luba. So I'm going to turn this over to Rachel, who is going to talk about our next slide, which is standards, alignment, and context. And over the next bit of time together, you're going to hear from multiple people from DEL, so there'll be transitions and time for questions as well. So Rachel?
Great, thanks, Nicole. So we wanted to give you a little bit of context about where we're coming from as we're developing our progression of standards. So as you know, the WAC needs to be written in a way that is legally enforceable and that all licensed providers must comply with all WAC requirements. So starting with this foundation of quality, we've really started to dig into our early achievers and our ECAP standards. So in early achievers, it needs to reflect the Early Start Act requirements and also support provider choice. So it's a difference between the WAC and early achievers. So providers serving low-income families must now meet a minimum rating threshold of a level 3 in order to continue to receive state funding, but there are many ways that they can actually demonstrate their quality within the early achiever standards. So the standards will reflect all of the ways for providers to meet quality and be clear that providers do not need to meet every standard in order to demonstrate their quality, but they have choice. So providers will choose which standards to highlight in order to demonstrate the high quality of their early learning facilities. Now ECAP, they underwent a very large collaborative effort to revise the performance standards in 2014, which frames the basis of the research and the intent behind the progression work that we're doing now. So these performance standards are similar to WAC in that they must be adhered to by all ECAP programs. So some of the requirements for ECAP programs are currently found in the ECAP contract, and so we're taking this opportunity with the alignment work to take that contract language and the standards and combine them and simplify the language and the requirements for ECAP providers. So Kelly is going to talk more specifically about ECAP in this next slide.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. So again, this writing process for us in ECAP has really given us an opportunity to update our ECAP performance standards, and Rachel started to outline this, and I'm just going to get into a little bit more depth about the ECAP contract. So since 2010, when the last full set of our ECAP performance standards were released, all the updates and the new requirements have been held since that time in Exhibit A of our contract, which is our statement of work. And so by taking these updates to the performance standards, it cleans our contract as a whole and helps us to be a lot more organized and useful for contractors. So there's a much clearer understanding and division between what goes in a contract and what the standards, what goes in the standards. So we're really excited about this opportunity for that. So something else that's happening is that we've been moving 2 pilot programs into the ECAP performance standards, which is a big part of the work we've been doing to revise or to write the family engagement section in this alignment work. And so these new research-based field-tested programs help provide us a more formal framework to help us continue to enhance our approach to how we support and work with families who are enrolled and experiencing ECAP. And so now it's my pleasure to turn, 2 of our ECAP pre-K specialists are actually going to talk about those 2 pilot programs with you in some more depth. And so right now it's my pleasure to introduce the first of those 2 pre-K specialists, which is Nicole Lohr, who's an ECAP pre-K specialist stationed in our DEL Spokane office. And she's going to be talking with all of you about mobility mentoring. So Nicole, it's all you.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Hopefully.
We can hear you.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. It's great to be here, and thank you for having me here. So mobility mentoring is the approach that we're using with this ECAP pilot. And just before I dive into what is mobility mentoring, just a little bit of a reminder that the pilot is happening with selected contractors across the state. And so these are contractors that that have decided to participate in this pilot with us this year. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Okay, so what is mobility mentoring? So it's the professional practice of partnering with individuals and families so that they may acquire the resources, skills, and sustained life changes necessary to attain and preserve their economic independence. So the basis of it is moving folks experiencing the crisis of poverty through to being able to have their economic independence. So core principles of mobility mentoring. So this describes both the programs and the services delivered using the Bridge to Self-Sufficiency, which I will talk a little bit about in a few slides for DEL's version of that Bridge to Self-Sufficiency. So that's the platform for participants for assessing, doing a partnered self-assessment with a coach or a staff member to see where they are on this particular measure of assessment, the Bridge. And then from there, they do goal setting. They also do outcomes measurement and the staffing practice that helps people attain economic independence. So it's based on a set of key principles, elements, and assumptions. So some of those are individualization. So there's no one-size-fits-all kind of answer for working with individual families. It's also a horizontal path to economic independence, so it must bridge all of the domains that I'm going to talk about in just a couple of slides. It also requires a little bit of time, so effective interventions provide continuity, there's patience and sustainability in that. It also focuses on co-investment, so matching investment of both the participant and the staff. And then it also is based on networking. So no one gets there alone. Personal and professional networks are absolutely necessary to be able to get through the mobility mentoring process. So, program services that are there. So we have staff support participants in acquiring the resources and skills and sustain life changes necessary to progress in each pillar on the core framework, the Bridge. And participants will pick one or two areas to focus on with their time with us in ECAP. So we use the Bridge, which you see, I believe, right before on the slide here. We use the Bridge to facilitate conversations, to gather baseline information for families, to build relationships, and to help participants create clear and individualized SMART goals. So SMART, the acronym for SMART is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So we want to make sure the goals meet those standards because that helps them to be more attainable. So in doing that, we also link families with resources, and we also use a coaching approach for one-on-one partnerships with families. So that's kind of the core about what mobility mentoring is, and then I want to step into really quickly why did we choose mobility mentoring, and then I'll get to explaining a little bit more about the Bridge. So one of the reasons why we chose mobility mentoring and collaboratively with participants here is that it's research-based, number one. So in searching for an approach, it was limited to finding something research-based, and mobility mentoring does have that research-based approach, and it has outcomes that's linked to that approach as well. Also, we received a lot of great feedback. So technically, we're in year 2 of the pilot. In the first year, we piloted 2 different approaches, and some of the feedback from mobility mentoring was, from staff, they're saying that the Bridge helps to open up deeper and more meaningful conversations with families, It helps staff think of other ways to encourage families to talk about their situation. And then just was it last Monday? No, it was December 5th. So on December 5th, a webinar that we have, an ongoing webinar with our agency coordinators out in the field who are piloting this approach. A staff member shared that this approach is fundamentally changing goal setting in ECAP. So goal setting is something that we've always done in ECAP, but here's her example that she used, that instead of trying to help families come up with a goal, grasping for something like getting a library card or eating meals together, which are definitely important. But it's fundamentally changing these goals from this process to be more self-sufficiency related. And staff particularly see an increase in setting of financial goals with families, like budgeting or saving money, and report that families feel that setting financial goals will help their overall self-reliance the most. So that's some of the feedback that we've gotten from staff about how this approach is changing and helping build better and deeper relationships with families that we work with. And then the third reason about why mobility mentoring is, the first one is that we're aiming to keep the database to report, to collect family support data internal. And with mobility mentoring, we're able to build that into our already existing database, the Early Learning Management System. So we are able to, with pilot participants, collect data for family support right away and have immediate access to that, and that's something that we really wanted to have. And then the other piece about why mobility mentoring is cost and support. And so cost was definitely a factor, but support from EMPATH, Economic Mobility Pathways, who built this approach is invaluable. Their support has been wonderful throughout the last couple of years in helping us through this process as we implement it with new contractors and contractors that are jumping on for the second year, not necessarily all new contractors, but in implementing it with contractors this year and helping us with our trainings throughout the year, our webinars that we're doing with direct services staff, they've really been invaluable. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what you see on your screen here. So this is a screenshot from the introduction bridge for families that we have, and staff members who are meeting with families for the first time, either at an orientation or meeting individually with each family, they'll give them this document so that they know kind of what to expect as they go into the process of using mobility mentoring. So obviously parents and families are coming into ECAP and knowing that they're going to get preschool services for their child. Part of ECAP's comprehensive services include support to the family. So we describe this as, the whole family well-being being critical to a child's development. So in introducing this to parents, we've laid out that there's 5 different pillars of the bridge, and you can see them in the green down here. There's family stability, there's well-being, financial management, education and training, and employment and career management. So I'm going to go through each one of these just really quickly and describe what it means, and this is how staff are describing it to families that come through the program as well. So in the first pillar, family stability, there's 2 sub-pillars, and the first one is housing, and housing just means having a safe, affordable, stable place to call home. And then the second sub-pillar in family stability is family independence, and that's making sure that your family's needs are met so you can focus on your goals. And then the next pillar in well-being, we have health and mental health. And in the health and mental health sub-pillar, it means a family is able to feel physically and emotionally healthy so that they can participate fully in work, school, or family. And then the next sub-pillar is networks. And that means having people in your life who give personal support and who also have the knowledge and connections to help you achieve your goals. That's really an important piece of the bridge as well. And then moving over to financial management, we have debt, and debt means being up to date on any debt payments. And then savings means having enough money in the bank to meet your family's needs and afford more than the basics. Education and training means having enough education and training so that you can choose a well-paying and satisfying career. And then employment and career management is being employed in a career that pays enough so you can support your family. So really those are the core things that mobility mentoring really talks about needing to be self-reliant or self-sufficient in to be able to meet economic independence. So I think that's all that I have right now for explaining a little bit more about mobility mentoring, and we'll see if there's any questions, perhaps.
So yes, there are questions, and so the question is directing people to the resources demonstrating the evidence base for mobility mentoring. So Jessica, we can definitely get that out to you all. So this is research-based. There's a lot of evidence around it, so we'll be sure to send out a link, and we can send it to this entire group so that you've got some information about it. Any other questions? One of the things I would also just highlight about this, if Nicole didn't say this, is that some of our work that we're doing around this is getting some national recognition as well, so it's pretty exciting for us to be able to see that. And really, as we think about ECAP, go back to those statutory requirements and really think about how we're providing families with the tools and resources to make these changes like are being addressed in the bridge. So thanks, Nicole, for that. And if there are additional questions that come up, please feel free to keep typing them in. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
Great, thanks, Nicole. So and thank you, Nicole Laura. That was a great overview. As always, Nicole has really been a pivotal piece of leading this work. Certainly our whole team has jumped in and supported different elements. It's really been her leadership that has been really key to some of this. So thanks for taking us through that. Before we get to families moving forward, I just wanted to take a step back because I realized I don't think I did a very good job of prefacing sort of the purpose for us really diving into this, other than to say that, this next section, or really the first section of this Early Achievers and ECAP rewriting work across the progression is really focused on family engagement. So we're going to be looking at that section first. So one of the things, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the progress and where we are, and we're going to offer some examples at the end of the presentation. But one of the reasons that we want to talk about these two pilot programs is because as we dive into and we actually get the full progression for all of you to look at, we really want to make sure that it's well couched in context. And so we wanted to take some time to walk you through both of these pilot projects and the great work happening, because they really are at the center as far as influencing how we're rewriting the family engagement section specific to ECAP. So I wanted to make sure to say that, because I don't think that I said that very well when I first prefaced this piece of what we're doing today. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the second pre-K specialist, who's going to be ECAP pre-K specialist, who's going to be sharing with us the work we've been doing around families moving forward. So Carrie Beamer, who is stationed in our DEL Bellevue office, has been leading this specific work around families moving forward, which is a parent education curriculum focused on executive functioning. And I'm not going to say any more and turn it over to Carrie to tell you lots more. So Carrie, you're up.
Okay. I'm assuming everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so developing executive functioning skills in children at an early age can have a tremendous impact on how a child learns, how they function in school, later in life, in work, and in health. So executive function development can be, and research has shown that it is a better predictor of school success than IQ. So we know that we can positively impact children for a lifetime when we understand what executive function is, how it develops, and then by providing parents the strategies and habits that they need to help develop these skills in children. So this is sort of why we created the Families Moving Forward parenting curriculum. So Families Moving Forward, and sometimes it's referred to, if you see it in a document, as FMF, is a 6-week parenting curriculum that's based on the research that came from Harvard's Center on the Developing Child. We're really focusing on 3 major executive functioning skills, which is impulse control, working memory, and mental flexibility. And each week, we teach parents how to develop these skills within their preschoolers, and then we also touch on other subjects like stress reduction. We introduce the concept of mindful practices, and we look at family values. We are in our 2nd year of implementation with our ECAP contractors, and to date we have over 170 facilitators trained to go back to their communities and teach this class at a local site, which also encompasses 35 of our contractors. We're really pleased that this is an Early Achievers approved parenting curriculum, so that is really awesome for us. And in the last year, in 2015-2016, we implemented a research project in the spring with 2 sites. One was in Spokane, one was in Olympia. And in this research project, we partnered with Reflective Science, and they have an executive function measurement tool called the Minnesota Executive Function Scale, which is done on an iPad. And we tested both parents and children pre and post the 6-week course that they took to see if there was any movement or development in the children and or the parents' executive functioning skills. And while we had a very small number of kids and parents that were tested, it definitely showed promise, and we know we need some more data to get that N up to a bigger number, but it is very, very encouraging what we have seen in a very short period of time and being able to develop those skills. So if we want to go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about why Families Moving Forward. And this is a slide that I use a lot in our training. And if you see, there's sort of birth to 80 years old across the bottom, and then the development of skills, the executive functioning skills. And what we know is that, executive functioning skills, we're not born with them, but rather we have the potential to develop them. And it based on experiences and neuropsychology and interactions, this is when those skills begin to develop. And what research has shown us is that the ages between 3 and 5, you can see this area has the highest growth of those skills, which is why we're very intentional on looking at these preschool years and developing these skills. There's a second critical period in adolescence, sort of between the ages of 15 to your mid-20s, where we also see another increase in those skill development. But never again in a child's life will you see that development as big as you will between those years of 3 to 5. So the creation of this curriculum was really helping parents see their role in developing these skills in their children during these times. And we really believe that teaching parents about these things can be very impactful for a lifetime for these children. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, what Families Moving Forward is about, and be happy to talk or have any questions. Or Kelly or Nicole, if you want to add anything.
I think that's great. I don't have anything to add, but it does look like we have a couple of questions. Nicole, do you want to?
Yeah, so the question is, what proportion of programs are engaged in each of the pilots. So I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. So the Families Moving Forward was something that we required of our contractors who are implementing the full school day model. So we can get the numbers of sort of who is currently required to do that right now. What I'm not sure we have information on is others who are choosing to implement this, because there are people who have chosen to implement Families Moving Forward beyond just their full school day classrooms. And the other thing I was thinking that might be helpful for you all as well as we send out really the evidence base on the mobility mentoring work. We also have a report that we did on that, and I'm happy to include the links to that executive summary and the larger report that's specifically focused on the mobility mentoring work, and then we can include the numbers of contractors or some sort of percentage or something to show you how many people are implementing Families Moving Forward as a contract requirement, again with the caveat that that could be impacting and reaching more children and families based on contractor choice. The second question is, can you say more about family values? So can you clarify, Jessica, what you're looking for there? Can you give me some more context, and then we can try and answer the question?
In the meantime, we can go to that next one.
Yeah, and then the next question is, will Families Moving Forward be required for all models at some point? So I would say that that's something that's open for, that we're discussing as part of the progression process. I think one of the things that's really great about it is it does meet the early achievers requirement at this point in time, and we've had a lot of success with our contractors who are implementing it, who've talked about how they really like it. So I think this will be a place that, again, as the progression come out, that it will be great to hear people's feedback on that.
Hey, Nicole, this is Nicole Lohr, and I have the information on how many programs are participating, or how many contractors are participating in the Family Support Pilot, if you'd like me to share it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so the percentage that we have is about 35% of current contractors are participating right now. So that's about 19 out of the 53 that we currently have.
And this is Carrie. I also know that 35 contractors out of our 53 contractors are participating in Families Moving Forward.
Thank you for the data at your fingertips. We greatly appreciate it. And Carrie, this is a question for you. Can you just talk a little bit more about the family values portion? So I think that was part of what you talked about with the Families Moving Forward, some of the topics including stress reduction, mindfulness, and family values. So can you just expand on that a little bit?
Sure. One of the greatest things about these two pilot programs is they really have a lot of similarity, and they really play off of each other nicely. So when we get to, there's 2 weeks that we do some exercises in the classrooms around family values. We really are tying back in what they are working on for their bridge, and tying those SMART goals back in based on what their belief system is and what they value as a family. And it's another opportunity for us to circle back to the bridge and talk about what their current goals are and what their hopes and dreams are for their families.
Great. Thank you. Great.
Moving on.
Any other questions? So I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly.
Great. Thank you. And Carrie Beamer, thank you very much for your overview and your leadership on this work. She is, like Nicole in the work of mobility mentoring, not only have these two just been extremely committed in their leadership to both of these pilots, but they're quite passionate about how we continue to think about them becoming a core and central part of delivering services and supports to families in ECAP. So thank you both. So what we're going to move on to next is, so you see an example in this next slide of progression, and so this is actually an example that we pulled out of the family engagement rewrite work that we're doing. But before I really dive into that, I wanted to give the advisory or the committee an update on where we're at with the family engagement standards. So as you know, prior to this meeting, you didn't receive a draft of the progression of the rewrite of these family engagement standards, and the reason for that, even though we were scheduled to really start diving into that at this meeting, is because we're not ready. And we didn't really feel like they were at a place in any way that we were ready to put them out in draft. We just were learning a lot through this process, and we need a little bit more time. And so we want to make sure that the draft that comes out to all of you makes good sense. And we wanted to offer you up some examples, a couple of examples of how they are playing out in a few areas where we're feeling a little bit more comfortable with them. And sharing them. So that's what we want to do right now, is to give you a sneak peek at a couple of these examples. I'm going to go over one, and then Rachel is going to share the next one. But really, before I even get into the example, I just want to stress that we're really close, and we do plan to have, before the next committee meeting for sure, we'll have the full progression draft out for you to see. So you'll be able to see from WAC to ECAP across the 3 areas of progression. You'll be able to see all of that, and then we'll figure out what that's going to look like at the upcoming advisory committee to really sink into a little bit more. But it is coming your way. It's just not quite ready yet, in full transparency. So this example is where at the very base, at the foundation, our Washington Administrative Code, the WAC, is requiring early learning providers to, at a very sort of basic level, attempt to discuss information about a child with the parent or guardian. So really, again, sort of very foundational beginning place to start with families. And then as you move into the early achievers part of the progression, that's really where you see us presenting a list of actual choices and options that providers can use to keep parents informed about their child. And then as you move into the ECAP part of the progression, the requirements really focus in much more on very individualized and more targeted family support approach, where you can see, for example, that visits are conducted 3 times a year, and that there's a minimum of how much time you're spending, and far more parameters. And so this is an example that we thought was a good representation of where you can actually see the flow in how we are hoping, as we write the full progression across all the standards areas, that this is the kind of sort of smooth progression that we want people to experience out in the field. So I think I'll move to Rachel, because these are going to be relatively brief examples, and then we can go with questions. So Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you for example number 2, and then we'll take some questions.
Great, thank you. So as Kelly said, here's another example of a progression of an aligned standard. So we start with the WAC. Here the example is an early learning provider must give parents or guardians contact information for questions or concerns. So in early achievers, we're proposing a menu of options that a provider can choose from to address this. It used to be referred to as the community resources and the referrals to families. So we're making this progression from providers giving contact information to actually connecting them with more support, and having an opportunity to speak privately with families, brainstorm resources, etc. And then when you move into the ECAP progression, it's providing assistance in accessing the resources and following up throughout the year to ensure that the families are still receiving the individual resources that they really need. So it is truly that progression where it's this very general information, having a menu of options to choose from to help meet families' needs, and then in ECAP having that very targeted approach to support families.
Okay, we're going to pause here and see if there are any questions. I'm just going to wait another minute. Okay, so no questions. So that was all of the information that we had for you today. One of the things I don't have on this slide is actually the next steering committee meeting. This is on the call today, it's a combined group. So our next steering committee meeting is actually January 13th from 11 to 1. And then our next advisory committee meeting will be January 27th from 11 to 1. So some of the things that we'll be discussing on those next meetings really are some continued conversation about the weighted WAC and more updates on some of those focus groups. As Luba noted, we'll have some more information about the negotiated rulemaking and public comment process, some updates about that in January. Just to recap sort of where we've been in our conversation today about the progression, you know, trying to provide some more context that as we're doing things, particular with the ECAP progression, we're moving things out of the contract, which has essentially been sort of a holding place for them as we've done standards revision, moving them into the performance standards. So while it may be something that you didn't see in the actual performance standards document themselves, that there are things that are actually not new requirements. We're just changing the location of where they live. So when we have the progression document that comes out, there will be a color coding key that explains all of this as well. So folks can really see, again, the alignment, where things have moved from, where there are proposed changes. And as Kelly noted, we are continuing to work on refining that progression before it goes out to you. We are very close on that, and so we will be sending out an email with next steps once we have that progression. We're trying to finalize how we receive some of that feedback as well, so we can synthesize that in the best way possible. And then the other follow-ups I have for us is to send a follow-up email to this group as a whole and just send, again, the links to where folks can find the proposed WAC as it exists right now out on the website. Also send the research base for mobility mentoring, an executive summary of the report around the work we did with mobility mentoring, and then we will put in there the numbers that Carrie and Nicole were able to provide for us about the number of contractors that are participating in this as well. So that is what we have for you all today, and I'll pause for just another moment to see if there are any additional questions or thoughts before we end our time together. So Katie's question is about when we're going to see some of those, the summary of some of the changes. I will look into that and get back to you. Okay, thanks everybody for spending an hour of your Friday with us. Have a great day and a great weekend.
Thanks, everybody.